Well, we have a guest joining us by phone, Star Parker. She's been on the show numerous times, and I think most of my regular listeners know her. She is the founder of CURE, Center for Urban Renewal and Education. She's the president of that group. Coolest organization, just a great organization. Mentioned her many times in the show, and her organization, CURE, can be found at the website urbancure.org. And she has a fabulous Twitter feed. You can follow her on Twitter at Star Parker. I could read her very long bio, but that'll eat into my time to talk with her about what's happening in America today. But in short, she, Star Parker, founded CURE, and she is just a one-woman warrior on behalf of trying to bring prosperity, progress, order, and actual an effort to bring the American dream into more and more families in America's inner cities, to help Black America rise up out of the dependence on poverty and to inspire them to believe in what America offers. So she's been a stellar leader in this country. She actually worked in Washington back when we did welfare reform, which I think was 1996. She helped work on that bill. She's a tremendous conservative leader, and I believe we have her on the line. Hi, Star Parker. There she is. Well, there's a picture of her.
There I am. Guys, very good to be with you. Thank you. Yeah, here at Urban Cure, we're a policy institute that works on in three places: in public policy, in the media, and as you mentioned, in these poor communities. We've been working very closely lately with the White House to come up with strategic ideas to build up an economic system, if you will, system rooted in capitalism. And as we're all witnessing, a lot of that effort has been frustrated, but the president is resolved to continue to build his Opportunity Zone initiative in these urban centers and to rebuild the economy. So we're very happy to be here in Washington, D.C. as spokespersons for the conservative right.
I'm thrilled you're there, too. I'll tell you, folks, because I've been to Washington quite a few times, and sometimes a visit with Star there. She is a face and name and reputation known throughout Congress as someone, as a substantive, serious policy think tank, as a person who can come up with ideas that actually are practical and work, and whose opinion is sought by many people in the Congress, Senate, and the White House. But Star Parker, so here we are. We are in the very beginning of June 2020. And we had obviously a horrific weekend in America. And I just want to give you a very open-ended, tell us your reactions to what's happening and how do we move forward past this?
Okay, well, the first thing we're going to do to move forward past this is we are going to work very closely with Mitch McConnell to make sure that there's not another stimulus package. There's no way that we're going to bail these states out, especially with these larger cities and their leadership, not to declare a couple of things. The first thing that they should have declared is that that these protests are not justified. They encouraged protests. The mayor of Minneapolis should have come on and said, "Listen, everyone across this nation just witnessed the most egregious potential murder we've ever. There is a great pause in our country. We're in the middle of a COVID crisis, and this is not how we wanted to rebuild ourselves to get open so that we can get our economy jump-started. What you need to know is that this officer is under a union contract that allows him 2 days of resting, 2 days of getting his thoughts together before he goes in with his union representative, who then will help him hire a lawyer, who then we will be able to implement the law. We are going to serve justice. Calm down. You cannot go out and protest." That is the first thing that they should have done. Not allow protest. Not come out and tell them, make sure you protest, but be forceful, but be okay. We understand your frustration. That is the first lie. And I'm glad that you played the tape of the Black Democrat leader because out of Ohio, because there are many now Black Democrat leaders who are finally asking, wait a minute, what is going on? They don't know that the movement that they think that they're still a part of with the civil rights era has been hijacked from anti-American terrorists. That Antifa and Indivisible and all 89 groups that are registered under that umbrella are not about the same thing that they're about. They are about disrupting and destroying America. And so I'm glad to see more Black leaders are starting to come forth so that we can let them know that this is not about race. This is about power. I don't agree that the nation is racist. We know the nation is not racist. Most Americans today are cordial with their neighbors. They work hand in hand across racial lines at their jobs. They just want to be left alone. They don't want a government built on this perception of fairness. They want a government built on equal justice under the law. Most Americans understand that the branches of our laws grow out of the roots of our Constitution. They were ordained by God, the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. We know that. It is the left that goes around every day looking for racism. Ever since the Civil Rights era, it is the left that has institutionalized the perception of racism as a business and have implemented it into every system, whether it's our educational system, our professional systems. I mean, you can't find a businessman now that doesn't have to go through gobs of paperwork to make sure he has a certain amount of blacks in management and this one over there. They have systematically put race, diversity, and inclusion into absolutely every part of our lives. And this very elusive lie is what has built into our institutions and systems these conflicts that we're seeing today. That's why these unions are making sure that some union contracts, they won't even allow police officers to live in the very communities that they police. What kind of madness is this? So I think what's at stake for us, you said, I guess the second part of your question was, what should we do? Where should we go from here? What we should do is we should start really discussing then the burden of race and rage. What is it that Americans should be thinking about in these impoverished communities? The first thing they should be thinking about is that human beings live there and people should be free. People should be free. You know, it's interesting, Deb. I was thinking earlier about this whole question about whether all white people are racist. I hear more racism out of the mouths of liberals than I do conservatives. Most conservatives, they are the ones that actually look at their neighbor equal to them. They want responsible people, and they want people that understand and get up and do the same things that they do, which is good instead of evil. And I don't see the left ever just looking at human beings and say that we are the same. It is the left that has made the problems that we're witnessing today. So here in Washington, D.C., they destroyed our city. Our nation's capital is a war zone today, and I lay all of it at the feet of the Mayor Bowser. I know she wants on the short list for Joe Biden's vice presidential pick, but she allowed her city, our nation's capital, to be totally destroyed yesterday by putting an 11 o'clock curfew. The city's not even open. All of the country has reopened since COVID except Washington, D.C. We are not even in phase 1. And she allowed those individuals, I guess there are good people in both sides, to go out there and destroy this property. I was thinking earlier that maybe the president shouldn't have said that they are thugs. He should have said that they are uncivilized savages.
Wow, I'm so glad I agree with every word you just said. You know, I was thinking when you were talking also, you know, there was an incident, I'm sure you paid attention, I haven't talked to you in a while, but I'm sure you followed it a few weeks ago, where presidential candidate Joe Biden for the Democrats was on a talk show, and he was speaking. It was a podcast thing, and you could see the host, who was a black man, and Biden's talking to him, blahing along. He ended up saying, basically, if you don't support Biden, you ain't no black. And so that did not go over well, and there's a lot of people pushing back. But I noticed some commentary that followed on from that talk show host, as well as others, a spokesperson for the Black Lives Matter and a spokesperson for some other similar kind of group, all of them saying, in order for Biden to make up for having said that, he has to be firmer in his black agenda. And that's their term. They want a better black agenda out of him, which they were describing as fix the problems of, income inequality, education inequality. They went a long list of things that they are, and even how there is a coronavirus, a bigger problem with respect to coronavirus in the African American community. So their answer to his ugly racism was to say they want a black agenda. What's your reaction to that?
I expect that from the left. Charmaine de God, as he calls himself, and others call him, and those of us that know historically that Charmaine was actually the founding father of the Western civilization, so it's a mockery in and of itself, yes. Is a very huge presence in the African American community, the secular community, not the Christian community. the third of African Americans that take their Bible seriously and go to church and believe it are on the side of the right. They have told pollsters for the last 30 years that they're on the side of the right. They are evangelical and conservative. But he represents the side of the left, and so yes, the side of the left, in order for Biden to get their their extra energy, then they have demands, and one of those demands is an African American VP pick. So that's why they're trying to find somebody that's not as polarizing, because they know that the country and most of the Americans in the country on the right or that middle are sick and tired of race being a wedge issue, and they don't think that they can pull it off again to put an African American after what happened with the Barack Obama. So they're in a dilemma because they don't really want to pick an African American female because they know that they will lose. But that's one of the demands. The other demands are if we swallow that you're not going to do that because you've convinced us that, look, you guys, you know that we're not going to be able to pull this off. America's so racist, they're not going to vote for a black bum and all the rest of the stuff that they continue to tell us. They know that they will then get other positions, high positions, as well as a big purse. And that's what they're really looking for, big government. You know, it's interesting. You mentioned the COVID. I thought it was fascinating. And unfortunately, the White House even fell into it, that you would racialize an international pandemic. To even go down the race road was just incredible for us to hear so-called leaders of the country now segregate and separate us out based on an international pandemic. In fact, during that time, when they started making such a big deal out of it, that white people just want black people dead, that's why they don't give them health care, I had to point out on one of the shows that then why is it killing Italians in Italy if it's so discriminatory? And then Americans decided that they just wanted to target African Americans in only America. This is foolish nonsense. But that said, we are so divided as a country, and what's at stake in this next election, the heart and soul of the country, is very, very volatile, because you got about 60 million American voters who want the right and 60 million Americans who want the left, and that's what even this race rioting is about.
You know, Star, there was actually commentary already talking about how if this protest were to continue to be so violent and threatening and destructive, it tends to drive the suburban voter toward Republicans, even if you had kind of the intellectually well-informed, a little bit, I always think of them as a little bit virtue signaling, but the people who live in the suburbs want to signal their open-mindedness, and so of course they're going to vote for big government. This kind of stuff may drive those voters back when they see that they don't see the police in their area, their governors, whoever else has the authority to get control. They won't do it. It may drive people back toward that. I do think that Democrats are in a bit of a dilemma, because they've in many ways encouraged this anger and this sense of America being racially divided, and then there's a big riot over racial division, and they are a little bit afraid to crack down.
Well, we're still a few months away from the election, so anything can happen. And so I agree with you to some extent, but it can go either way. Look at their strategy. They also know that Americans are very timid people, and they just want no noise. Please stop this, stop this, stop this. And you have a scripture that says that even a fool seems wise if he keeps his mouth closed. And that's why they keep Biden hidden away. They don't want him speaking, because it will begin to just play out in itself to get so noisy. You know, I just finished a book, Necessary Noise, and I would encourage your audience to get it. I go through these points about what happens, why Trump was elected, and why we need to reelect him, frankly. But yeah, it depends. It can go either way, because if it gets so noisy that people get afraid, they will want calm, and Donald Trump is not calming. Donald Trump is called for this moment like a Constantine to divide. And this is what we needed to do. We can't go on the way we have, as I argue in my book. We are going to be coming out of this next election either on the path to biblical and free, or on the path to secular and total status, total big government. We're already in that space. But now this election is going to decide how far down that path we go. And that's why it's getting louder and louder. I was predicting last year, I said they're going to riot, because that's what they had to do, in 1992, because George Walker Bush, the first Bush, although people were very upset with him because he raised taxes anyway, they wouldn't have they would have reelected him. But when we had the riots, that's when we saw the polling change toward Clinton. People in this country are afraid of race matters. This is why they use race so willingly and so often, because they know most Americans don't have the language to push themselves through those discussions. They don't even want to try to argue that, look, I'm cordial to my neighbors. I work hand in hand across racial lines, because they have something for that too. Oh, no, now everybody has a black friend. You can't win when you're arguing on race. That's why we need to take it away from that discussion and argue that this is not about race. This is about power. And we need to know that going into this next election, that everything we do should be about November.
Amen to that, Star. You mentioned some of your books. I had a list here. I had a long introduction ready, but I really wanted to get you on as soon as I could. But Star Parker is the author of Necessary Noise in 2019, America Divided 2018, Conservatism is Not Racism, great title, 2018, Blind Conceit 2014, White Ghetto 2006, Uncle Sam's Plantation 2003. Great books. I urge you to read them all. And I also want to commend, I saw on your website today, I just had time to begin reading it, but CURE, your organization based in Washington, D.C., Center for Urban Renewal and Education, had a policy briefing in January of this year in which there was a large survey you did of African American attitudes, opinions, and voting behavior. It was a stellar and lengthy study, but your conclusions, I was very impressed. I want to urge our listeners to go to your website, urbancure.org.
Okay.
Yeah. Do you want to say a couple things about any remarks about your policy briefing and African American attitudes and opinions in voting?
Well, we're getting ready to do another on the one this month will be on family and children, because all of these things that we're talking about tie together. You cannot have a free people if you don't have a moral people, and you can't have a moral people without God. And all of the data shows this. And it's fascinating, the report that you're pointing to on Black Americans' attitude. And the left understands some of the challenge of African Americans, because for so long they have just sang the same song, that you've got to look over your shoulder because they're out to get you, that many African Americans believe it. It's one of the reasons I'm launching my own news talk show this week, so that we will have alternative messaging for this particular community. For too long, it's why we have our clergy program. For too long, they've only heard that one message. This is why we have blackcommunitynews.com as an organization, so that blacks can get another song. They have to change the tune of that information and get a regular diet of new information about freedom, about personal responsibility. And so the website, yes, they'll find various policy reports, because we put one out every month. We are a policy institute. We are working closely with the Congress to try to move the direction of freedom. Right now, a quarter of our budget is in anti-poverty programs, $900 billion a year. So we're trying to move a little bit of that over. It's more difficult because of COVID. One thing we can do is not pass another stimulus package, but the second thing we can do is personalize the payroll tax, allow for people to put that payroll tax into an IRA, so that they can start building wealth. If you're on Wall Street, you're not going to burn it down. And so those are the things that we look at. One policy study that we did right before COVID was on homelessness, because we were and still will be working very closely with the Trump administration to fix that problem. The one thing you got to know about this president, when he wants to fix something, he just says, I want that fixed. And then everybody has to say, yes, sir. And then we go to fix it. And he is wanting to fix things to make America great again. So that means we get opportunity to limit the role of government and allow for personal creativity to come up and try to solve some of these problems in America.
Star Parker, you are a gem. I'm so glad you happen to be available today. For our listeners, I definitely urge you to, first of all, read her books. Go to their website, urbancure.org. And also, you can follow her on Twitter @Star Parker, read her books. And honestly, you just make a tremendous contribution to America every single day by all that you do. I appreciate that. You're welcome. For people to find your new show, how do they do that?
Well, I'll let you know. Maybe I'll come back on, but it'll be up on blackcommunitynews.com first and foremost, because we've got to push these ideas into the communities that need to hear them most. So everybody that was encouraging folks to go and destroy all of the property, they need to hear that. In fact, we were in a funding campaign right now. Every one of those communities that went up in smoke, we want to put billboards. You want to break out of poverty? Here are 5 things to do. Finish school. Number 2, take any job. Number 3, get married. Number 4, save and invest. Number 5, give back into your local community. So we're planning that out right now to run these billboards in every one of these cities that are now torched, so that will be what all of those young people that you were talking about earlier, those 14 and 15-year-olds that got convinced to go out there and just break mayhem, they'll be able to look up there and get the instruction that they need. Poverty does hurt. Poverty is horrible. So we have to lead them into, well, what do you need to do to break it? It's not go break somebody's window and take their purse out of the window. It's finish school, take any job and just work harder than the person above you, get married, save and invest, and then give back to your local community. So that's something that we will be doing. And if any book that your listeners are going to get for this time in the election, I appreciate that they'll read all of them, but if they have only resources to get one, get Necessary Noise. How Donald Trump inflames the cultural war and why this is good news for America. Necessary Noise. All that we're going through right now included, which of course I wasn't able to put in that book, is necessary. We are at the place where Abraham Lincoln had to open the scriptures in the 1850s and say, a house divided itself against itself cannot stand. We're in a war. This is not about, we can work together. We can't. There's nothing we have in common with the hard left. They're
Right.
about secularism. They kill babies in the womb, and they're about big government. Their answer to everything is take it from the wealthy. There are more, there are graffitis around this town, Washington, D.C., eat the rich, than any other thing that we've seen, or at least that I've seen, and I walked the town over the last couple of days. So I don't know what she's going to allow tonight, having the city open last night till 11 o'clock. No one else was open because we still closed down, but I think that she's going to try to make a curfew tonight so that maybe they can bring this back in control. It's just out of control. But when the dust settles, we can remember that this is all about the election. And when we come up out of November, we are either going to be on a path toward biblical truth and freedom, or we're going to be on a path toward secularism and big government.
I love that you put that on your website. I saw that you had secularism and statism, which I love putting those two things together. I mean, it's really good. It's exactly right. And people don't always connect even those dots to recognize that secularism leads to statism. It leads to government control. So I think...
And you know what? And statism leads to secularism. Every communist country has no God. It's incredible. You're right. So, yeah, we try to put it in the most simple terms for when my first editor, when I first at USA Today, my first time I got landed a column. Now I write for creators. But she uses that, you know the KISS principle. You got to keep it simple. Saying, why? America is at the 5th grade level. I know you want to show how smart you are, but America is at the 5th grade level. So what we try to do at CURE is remember that the people we're trying to reach might even be at the 4th or 3rd grade level. So that's why you see, that narration that you do when you go to our website and or when you go to blackcommunitynews.com or our news site, cureamerica.news. So that's it. And thank you, Deb. Thank you so much for letting me come and share with your audience, because these are very tender moments for us. And I thought that maybe I contacted you, which is unusual for me to reach out, but I know that you're just special to me, and that I knew that you would be searching in your heart, especially, I think I thought about you after Dallas, when we saw that this man was just trying to protect his own business, and they just viciously beat him. I thought, you know what, I've got to do something. One of the trips I made to Dallas when I had to speak in Fort Worth, the husband of the person that invited me to speak drove me back to my hotel in Dallas, and he was a Dallas police officer. So we had an amazing discussion from Fort Worth to Dallas about all of these various issues. And I'll tell you, we've got to make America great again. We've got to take this country back from that hard left.
Absolutely. I am so grateful you were available. And your book, I will confess, I think I've looked at almost all the other ones, read most of them. I did not get Necessary Noise. I knew it was your latest. I will get it. Maybe we'll have you back on soon to talk about it. How about that?
You're going to love it. You're going to love Necessary Noise. And in fact, anyone that's listening that has any friend, especially if that friend even ever steps in a church, and I don't want to be involved in politics. I don't like to. This is the book for that one. This is the book for the one that would let this go to the left because they're uncomfortable with Donald Trump.
In that case, I have a lot of friends in my mind already, so I will get it off to them.
This is the one, and they get many. This is the one that anyone that you know and anyone that's listening that you know that is still uncomfortable with Donald Trump, but they're a good person. They live their life right. And I'm not talking to Temple. We don't need to get them in this. I'm not talking about Black Lives Matter. I'm talking about anyone you know that is a good, decent person, but they're uncomfortable with Donald Trump. You need to get them this book, Necessary Noise. I wrote it to them. I wrote it to that person, that decent person who's in quieter communities, that get up on Sunday morning, go into church. They get up on Monday morning, they get their kids ready for school. They tell them to mind their manners, and if the teacher calls me, we got issues, and then they go to work. And then they go at the end of the week and they look at their paycheck and they say, what happened? But they don't then blame anybody else for what happened. They then try to live off of that little what happened, and all the rest of that money going into these big old coffers of all this big government here in Washington, D.C., wasted away into these race narratives of inclusion and diversity based in lies. It's an illusion. They're lies. And therefore, this book was written for them so that they will understand what's at stake. Because when we come up out of that election in November, we will be in really serious trouble if whoever the left is putting up, I don't think it's going to be Joe Biden, I think it's going to be the governor of New Jersey. But we will be in serious trouble, no matter who it is.
Couldn't agree more.
No matter who it is.
Yeah, it can't be Biden.
They're all the same.
Yeah, they're all the same. It won't be Biden.
Oh,
yeah,
no. It won't be Biden. No. We all know that. I mean, he's stumbling today. No. We know that. We know that. Yeah. You think like them. We know that. They see what's at stake, and they really want that power. And some are saying, oh, no, they're just going to try to get the Senate, and they're going to let Trump have another 4 years. No, they're not. They're fighting they're fighting for the heart and soul of this country.
Yeah.
They know that. Do we?
Yeah. I actually say the answer to your last question, I think more and more Americans are figuring that out. This is the heart and soul of the country election. Star Parker, we'll have to do this again soon. I'm going to get your book, I'm going to read it, and then hopefully next time we're together, we're on the path toward a little bit of back to order and back to justice system and back to getting America back on track. So can't thank you enough.
We will be. You're welcome. We will be, because they don't have that much more to burn down. They just kind of destroyed everything. One more thing I got to tell you, because, my next door neighbor here in my office is a jewelry store. He's been here forever. And on the other side is a pen store where you collect fine pens. He even has a $5,000 Ronald Reagan pen for people that collect ink and pens. So they both got broken into. And, they're older now, and they're just a sad thing. And so, but the one in the jewelry store, and I'm like, oh, why didn't you clear for COVID? He said, well, it was just little things I left out. And he said, yeah, and the pen guy got broken too, because I hadn't talked to them yet. I said, oh, I hope that they didn't damage him. He said, no, they didn't take anything. These people don't know how to write.
There's a good point. And they wouldn't have wanted a Ronald Reagan pen anyway.
That's what I said. Like, you know what? That's interesting. They didn't break into libraries either. But they sure broke into Ferragamo. So, no, but they need direction. So I hope our billboard campaign is going to work, because if we can take advantage of this moment. It's dark, but there's light. If we can take advantage of this moment and give clarity for these young people that, they have the new purse now. Yep, they got a new outfit. They went in the store. But if they see billboards all up over their community that say, you really want out of poverty? Here are 5 things you need to do. Finish school, take any job, get married, save and invest, and give back to your community. It's really just that simple.
Love it, Star Parker. A lot of what you do is it's basic truth, basic common sense, basic things some people know, but a lot more people need to know. Star Parker, thank you so much. We'll be back soon and often. Okay, take care. Bye-bye. So, folks, so I'll tell you, this is a great, great woman we were just speaking with. Her organization does so many great projects. We could have spent the whole time talking about the latest thing they're doing, their pastors' conferences, their whole project of using pastors in low-income communities to get the messages of basically loving America, conservatism, Christianity, constitutionalism, capitalism. She uses those pastors as their wedge into the community. She works with the pastors, and they in turn around and spread the message. She's just a national gem.